Imagine one man causing so much death. Forests grew back on land that used to be farms. Now picture that same man protecting religious freedom. That is Genghis Khan. Brutal, strategic, terrifying, and annoyingly efficient. He went from starving exile on the Mongolian steppe to ruler of the largest land empire in history. So, was he a hero of order or a walking apocalypse on horseback? Today, we open Genghis Khan's Playbook of Power. Genghis Khan started life not as a prince in a palace, but as Temujin. His father was poisoned when Temujin was around 9. From the start, survival and power were the same thing. The real turning point came with his wife, Borte. As a teenager, Temujin married her to lock in an alliance. Soon after, Merkit raiders stormed in, kidnapped Borte, and handed her to one of their warriors. For Temujin, this was not only personal heartbreak. It was public humiliation layered on top of old tribal grudges. He went straight to powerful allies, Togrul of the Karaites and his blood brother Jamuka, and convinced them to join a rescue mission. Together, they assembled around 20,000 warriors, hit the Merkit camp hard, and took Borte back. That raid did more than save his wife. It showed the steppe that this starving orphan could organize, persuade, and win. It forged alliances, built his reputation, and gave him his first taste of command. On the steppe, tribal loyalty usually followed bloodlines. Your clan, your kin, your people. Temujin threw that in the fire. After the rescue of Borte, he started picking up followers who noticed something strange about him. He rewarded ability and loyalty, not just noble birth. If you fought well, followed orders, and stayed loyal, you rose. If you betrayed anyone, you died. There is a famous story where some enemy soldiers killed their own leader and offered his head to Genghis as a gift. Most rulers would welcome them as new allies. Genghis had them executed. If they betrayed their own lord once, he knew they would betray him later. For him, loyalty was sacred. He built a system where promotions depended on performance. Commanders could come from humble backgrounds as long as they delivered. Spoils of war were shared, not hoarded by a tiny aristocratic club. This turned his army into a magnet for ambitious, talented people from many tribes. Genghis Khan did not win because he had the biggest armies. He won because his armies moved like a storm. Every Mongol warrior had multiple horses and could travel between 60 and 100 miles in a single day. There were no slow infantry columns dragging them down. The entire force was mounted and flexible. Their main weapon was the composite bow. It could hit targets over 300 yards away. They fired accurately while riding at full speed, which is not something your average armored knight was trained for. One of their favorite moves was the fake retreat. They would pretend to panic, drop loot, and run. Enemy troops, smelling victory and free stuff, would break formation and chase. When they were stretched out and disorganized, Mongol units would wheel around and hit from the sides and rear. Entire armies collapsed, chasing a victory that was scripted from the start. Mobility let Genghis choose when to strike, where to fight, and when to vanish. Genghis Khan understood something grim about human behavior. You do not always need to fight everyone. You just need enough people to hear what happens if they say no. When Mongol armies approached a city, they usually gave a choice. Surrender, pay tribute, open your gates, and keep your lives. Or resist, and watch your city erased. If a city resisted, they often faced mass slaughter. Survivors could be used as human shields, or forced to march in front of the Mongol army for the next siege. Some cities were destroyed so completely that they never recovered. At the same time, stories of these massacres were allowed and sometimes encouraged to spread. Merchants, refugees, and spies carried tales of what happened to people who fought back. By the time the next city heard Genghis was coming, half the work was done. People surrendered just to avoid becoming the next legend. This was not random cruelty. It was strategy. The terror created a reputation that traveled faster than his horses. Before Genghis Khan invaded your territory, he often knew your politics, your geography, and your weak points. He used merchants and travelers as informal spies. They moved along trade routes, gathered gossip, and reported back on city defenses, rivalries inside courts, and local resources. Scouts rode ahead to map rivers, passes, and bottlenecks. By the time his army arrived, the campaign plan was already tailored. He knew which factions hated each other, which rulers were arrogant, and which fortresses were vulnerable. He used local resentments, offered deals to some groups, and smashed others. This constant flow of information meant his forces were rarely walking blind into a fight. It also made it easier to rule conquered regions, because he had a sense of who could be trusted and who needed to be watched. When Genghis Khan ran into something useful, he did not care where it came from. If it worked, he took it. At the start, the Mongols were not great at siege warfare. They were steppe cavalry, not wall breakers. So when they attacked China and Central Asian cities, they captured local engineers instead of killing them. Those engineers built catapults, siege towers, and machines that hurled stones and fire at city walls. He did the same with administration. He adopted the Uyghur script as the writing system for Mongolian. He used Chinese and Persian officials to help manage taxes, records, and law across a massive empire. His policy on religion was also practical. Priests of all faiths were exempt from taxation. Buddhist monks, Muslim scholars, Christian clergy, and shamans were all allowed to worship freely. This reduced resistance and made his rule easier to accept. Genghis Khan unified the Mongol tribes, crushed old feudal systems, promoted talent, protected trade, and allowed wide religious freedom. He also destroyed entire cities, triggered demographic collapse across regions, and left a trail of death that reshaped the map of Eurasia. So, what does his playbook teach us? Power grows fast when you reward loyalty, move quickly, collect information, and adapt without ego. It turns toxic when you decide security only comes from destruction. On Dirt on History, we pull these figures apart so you can see what power looks like without the cleanup. Tell me in the comments, Genghis Khan, hero, villain, or something worse? And which historical figure should we open next in the Playbook of Power series? Hit like if you learned something, and subscribe if you want more history you can almost smell.